Eyes are on the White House this morning as new details emerge in the call between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. The diplomatic crossroads focusing on possible steps towards a ceasefire in Ukraine. To help break down what's at stake and what this could mean for the region, we're joined by Brian Taylor, professor at Syracuse University's Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs. Professor, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
All right, so let's start with this. What, in your mind, Brian, should the president, President Trump and President Putin be discussing on this phone call? What would you suspect?
They will clearly be discussing the issue of a potential ceasefire in the Russia-Ukraine war. The U.S. has been pushing this really since President Trump came to office. President Zelenskyy of Ukraine has agreed to it. The Europeans are pushing it. President Putin, however, has been resisting it and is interested in continuing the war. And I think he will try and change the subject a bit to working on the bilateral relationship between Russia and the U.S., or maybe trying to do a deal over the heads of the Ukrainians.
So from what we've seen building up to this point over the last few weeks, the Russian president has not, really pulled back on his moves. In fact, has really increased attacks, drone attacks, particularly in Ukraine, as of late, including this past weekend here. Does he have the leverage to continue? And what leverage does either side have going into this phone call?
Putin is determined to continue the war at this point. He's still far away from his objective, which is achieving some form of political control over Ukraine. So he is not particularly interested in a deal, I don't think, but he doesn't want Trump to conclude that he is the obstacle to the deal, so he is going along with it. In terms of the leverage on the U.S. side, there certainly are things the United States could do to put additional leverage on President Putin to bring about a ceasefire. The biggest probably would be increasing U.S. military assistance to Ukraine. I think that's probably unlikely under the Trump administration. But there is a bill in the Senate sponsored by Senator Lindsey Graham that would put heavy sanctions on Russian sale of oil and other energy products. So Trump might be more hospitable to that outcome if he concludes that President Putin is stalling him, which he's talked about. But generally, after President Trump talks to President Putin, he comes away with a positive impression of President Putin, and I doubt if it will change today.
Yeah, it seems, as many people have pointed out as of late, it seems flattery seems to be the way to get President Trump on your side, which the Russian side has been doing. Russian officials have been sending out positive messages about the president leading up to this phone call. So the question is anything going to be coming from this deal? And if so, what? I mean, is it just to set up for a meeting? Is it just to say that they've done something? What can you expect here?
I honestly don't expect any kind of major breakthrough. I think this could be a prelude to a Trump-Putin summit. I think Trump wants that. I think Putin wants that. I still don't think that would lead to an end to the war. I don't think people should be expecting that. I think a key problem here is the Trump administration message is if we don't get a deal soon, we're going to walk away from this entire conflict. And that really is not going to be any kind of problem for President Putin. If the U.S. stops supporting Ukraine and walks away from the conflict, that makes it easier for him to achieve his objectives on the battlefield. So if the U.S. really wants to bring about a ceasefire, they need to put some pressure on Putin and not just put pressure on President Zelenskyy of Ukraine.
One more quick question before we go here. There seems to be a buildup of Russian troops on the border with Finland as of late. Is this similar to you to what the Russians did leading up to the invasion into Ukraine?
No, I don't think we need to worry about a Russian buildup leading to a direct attack on Finland. Finland is a NATO member state. That would mean direct war with all of NATO. And, Vladimir Putin is often quite ambitious militarily and politically, but I don't think he's that ambitious. I think this is more long-term preparation for the change that has been brought about by both Finland and Sweden joining the NATO alliance, which they have done since Russia's war against Ukraine.
Right, that happening in the last few years or so. All right, Brian, thank you so much for joining us and providing your insight into this.